Since even before FNaF Security Breach came out, the identity of Glamrock Freddy has been one of the biggest mysteries and most fiery debates among the FNaF community because there's really a lot of options. There's a good amount of evidence for each theory and good rebuttals to some options, so today, in preparation for part 3 of my FNaF timeline tackling the Security Breach era, rather than having to squeeze it into that video, I decided to just make it its own video. I've discussed Glamrock Freddy in videos in the past, but I've never done a video solely on him, so that's what we'll be doing today, trying to find a definitive conclusion on who Glamrock Freddy really is. I'll be starting from the weakest theories and going up to the ones I think are strongest, and spoilers, the most likely option probably isn't who you think. The first option for who Glamrock Freddy is simply that he's not possessed at all and is just an AI. During my playthrough of Security Breach, I actually originally believed this theory, but that was just because at the time I hadn't noticed any hints as to his identity yet. The main problem with this theory is that there's really nothing suggesting that he is only an AI. Like, when I was writing this, I could genuinely not think of a single thing that pointed towards Freddy not being possessed, and that's because there really isn't anything. I turned to a post that was literally dedicated to trying to prove Glamrock Freddy is only an AI, to try and find evidence, and somehow even there I didn't find any evidence. But while there isn't any supporting evidence, there are problems. For one, Freddy talks about how he was under the control of Glitchtrap and that he is not himself, as in Freddy is not Freddy. That basically on its own confirms he's possessed, and there's a bunch of evidence for certain characters that he is possessed by, making Freddy being possessed a much more likely option. The most popular idea for who Glamrock Freddy is that he's Michael Afton. This idea was popularized by MatPat, and I actually believed this shortly after Security Breach first came out. The evidence for this was decently convincing at the time, but now looking back, I don't think it's convincing enough anymore. I think the biggest piece of evidence for Michael being Glamrock Freddy is the Princess Quest ending, showing Freddy in the center with Vanessa and Gregory on either side. With Gregory's plenty of big connections to the bite victim and Vanessa's feud to Elizabeth, the ending seems to mirror the Happiest Day image in FNaF World's Old Man Consequences ending, seeming to represent Mike in the middle with the bite victim and Elizabeth on either side. He also feels the need to take care of Gregory, which could be him trying to make up for his past mistakes, as he protects a kid who is heavily associated with his younger brother who he accidentally killed. The security badges around the Pizzaplex are all of Glamrock Freddy as a security guard, a possible allusion to Mike, as Mike is often working as a guard throughout the series. The line of "I found myself" in the Afton ending could also be literal, as Glamrock Freddy could have literally found Michael's body, which is what caused him to get possessed by Mike. In the Fire ending, Glamrock Freddy has the instinct to burn down the Pizzaplex, a possible connection to how Michael burned down the FNaF 3 location. It does make some amount of sense narratively, as Mike throughout the series has been dedicated to ending everything, so him doing the same in Security Breach does add up. However, the problem with Glamrock Freddy being Michael Afton is that simply there's much more evidence that points to Michael actually being alive. I made an entire video on this topic, which you should totally check out if you haven't already, but basically, Remnant doesn't burn in fire, meaning that it would still be keeping Michael alive. The FNaF 6 ending has tutorial unit talk to Michael even after the fire. There's a FNaF AR email mentioning an M. Afton, and there's a couple other things that all imply Michael Afton did not die in the FNaF 6 fire. If that's true, which most evidence points to being the case, then Michael's spirit cannot be within Glamrock Freddy. Another idea that some people have latched onto recently is the idea that maybe Henry is the one possessing Glamrock Freddy. FNaF suggested it in a recent theory, as Henry did die in the FNaF 6 fire and could still be intent on destroying Afton for good. It would also add up with the "I found myself" dialogue if it were to be literal, and it also adds up with Freddy burning down the building like Henry did with FNaF 6. This idea does have less evidence than Mike being Freddy, but the reason I put it above Mike in terms of plausibility is because with Henry there isn't really anything that actually goes against it, making it entirely possible. But with that being said, there's not a whole lot of evidence to suggest it, so best we can do is say it's possible, and move on to talk about Cassidy. I think it's actually very likely that Glamrock Freddy is actually possessed by a spirit who, in the story of the older FNaF games, possessed Golden Freddy. At many points in the game, Glamrock Freddy is shown to look a lot more similar to Fredbear than normal Freddy, kinda like Rockstar Freddy does. On images of Freddy created by lights around the Pizzaplex, like at his green room and at the main entrance, Freddy is shown as being colored yellow with a purple hat and bow tie. Similarly, when we upgrade Freddy with Chica's voice box, his bow tie changes from black to purple. Why this happens in-universe is unclear, but what we see is that the bow tie had originally been purple and it had been painted over with black. This is very suspicious because it ties Glamrock Freddy to Fredbear. While Golden Freddy and Fredbear are technically different animatronics, Golden Freddy is still a version of Fredbear, and this could very much imply that Glamrock Freddy actually is Golden Freddy. Another thing that could imply this is something very specific that we can collect in the game. There are 6 different endings in Security Breach, but one of them requires you to collect certain items. Around the Pizzaplex are plushies that you can find that are actually in golden boxes. These are actually golden versions of the animatronics in the game that you can collect already in plush form: Moon, Sun, Chica, Monty, Roxy, and most importantly, Freddy. The golden plushie of Glamrock Freddy is literally called Golden Freddy. It's really weird the way it's worded like that. Glamrock Freddy colored golden being referred to as Golden Freddy wouldn't be suspicious if there hadn't already been a Golden Freddy in the series. We are also told by Freddy that his friends are here when he goes down to the Afton ending. Some people believe that he is referring to the Glamrock animatronics, but there's a few problems with that in my eyes. Freddy at this point doesn't really have any reason to believe that the Glamrock animatronics are actually here, especially since there isn't really any possible way that they could be. They literally just teleport. Some people say that he can see them because he has Roxy's eyes, but given we can see collectibles with the eyes, what we see while inside Freddy is what Freddy sees, meaning he is not able to see the Glamrocks. While yes, Roxy can apparently see animatronics through walls, Freddy apparently can't. Freddy also tells us that he will protect us from his friends. While he does protect us from Roxy, that's only Roxy. He says he'd protect us from his friends, not friend. But while he only protects us from Roxy, who is only one character, he also protects us from the Blob, who just so happens to be who he walks past when he says that line. And the Blob isn't just one character, it's many. Freddy in this moment is realizing that he himself is not Freddy. He is someone else entirely, a spirit. If he's realizing at this point that he is not Freddy, and he remembers who he is, why would he be talking about the Glamrocks? If he's a spirit and the Glamrocks aren't possessed by spirits, then the Glamrocks, at least after this revelation, are not his friends. This shows that he's referring to spirits that are friends with whatever spirit is possessing Freddy, and it really seems like Freddy's referring to the Blob. As I mentioned briefly earlier, Remnant does not burn in fire, which would mean that since the Blob has molten Freddy, he still contains the spirits of the missing children. This would mean that when Freddy said his friends were here, he was talking about the missing children inside the Blob. While I do have an explanation as to why this could work if Glamrock Freddy is Michael Afton, it works a lot better if Glamrock Freddy is someone like Golden Freddy, since they would be much closer friends. So because of all this, it makes a lot of sense that Cassidy is Glamrock Freddy. Or at least, it would make sense if it weren't for one thing. It is quite clear that the princess in Princess Quest is Cassidy, which is heavily implied by the original file name. It has since changed, but the fact that Vanessa can't be the princess, since the princess is really someone saving Vanessa, means that it kinda has to be Cassidy because, well, why would Cassidy be the file name in the first place? There's also the line in the files of the game that says, "It's me," which is a line commonly associated with Golden Freddy. When we hit the purple torches, a purple shadow reflection of the princess appears. This seems very much like a reference to Shadow Freddy. While Shadow Freddy's character isn't canonically a reflection of Cassidy, in terms of design it very obviously is. The reason it doesn't make as much sense for Cassidy to be Glamrock Freddy is because her spirit is occupied inside Princess Quest. While it is possible for the pieces of souls to be split up, Cassidy seems quite busy with Princess Quest, and narratively it isn't quite as satisfying for Cassidy to be the one keeping the bite victim safe. Another option is that Glamrock Freddy is just a new character. Some people suggest he's Lucia, or possibly Edwin, or someone else. Those are valid options, and it's possible for him to be pretty much any new character. I think it makes sense that Freddy is saying the Blob are his friends, but it's also possible some of the victims from the Tales epilogues are also inhabiting the Blob, along with the missing children. So if one of those victims was Freddy, then that would also line up with the friends line and the I found myself line. There's not a whole lot of evidence that Freddy is a new character, but if they're a new character, then there wouldn't really be evidence, would there? Not really, because we wouldn't know much, if anything, about them. Still, I think there's a couple other characters that make a little bit more sense. Runner-up for the most likely characters to be Glamrock Freddy is Charlotte Emily. Charlotte being Freddy doesn't have quite as much evidence as some other options, but it does have quite compelling evidence, and there's not really much going against it, minus just one other option being a little bit better. Charlotte being Glamrock Freddy explains the Blob being her friends, and protecting Gregory, as since we learned from the FNaF 6 ending, it's in her nature to protect the innocent, and it's implied that Charlotte and the bite victim were friends. I've discussed in past videos that the Fredbear plushie in the final minigame of FNaF 4 was almost definitely not William, but rather Charlotte, and one of those lines from the Fredbear plush in that scene is him telling the bite victim that he is broken. Glamrock Freddy towards the beginning of Security Breach tells Gregory that he is broken, tying Gregory to the bite victim of course, but also possibly tying Glamrock Freddy to the Fredbear plushie. The Golden Freddy plush also would line up with this, as if Glamrock Freddy is the puppet and the puppet is the Fredbear plush, then Glamrock Freddy is technically a Golden Freddy plush. The puppet mask in the blob also doesn't have any tear tracks, implying that Charlotte's spirit is somewhere else, which would also explain why the blob chooses not to attack Freddy. They really are his friends. But this also applies to the final, and in my eyes, most likely option as to who Glamrock Freddy is, the bite victim, just like Charlotte, who is friends with the missing children. The bite victim is also a likely spirit who possesses Golden Freddy, which explains the Golden Freddy plushie and the Fredbear references without having Golden Freddy be occupied, because while Cassidy is, the bite victim is not. The references to Golden Freddy actually make even more sense for the bite victim than they do for Cassidy, as Fredbear is more associated with the bite victim due to Fredbear being the one biting him, and Freddy in this game is shown as only a head on some occasions, and while Golden Freddy does appear as only a head multiple times throughout the series, which further implies a connection between him and Glamrock Freddy, it could also be alluding to the bite victim, as Glamrock Freddy appears as just a head on some occasions in the game, while the bite victim loses his head. The line of Gregory being broken could just be the bite victim reciting a phrase from his own vague memories to describe their current situation. It makes a lot of sense narratively as well, as the bite victim as a child could not protect himself, so now as Glamrock Freddy, he protects Gregory in a way he couldn't protect himself. He couldn't protect himself then, so he's protecting himself now. It makes a lot of sense for the bite victim's spirit to be Glamrock Freddy. So regarding Glamrock Freddy, that all answers the who. Now, all that remains to be answered is the how. But that's gonna have to wait for a video to come out after the release of Tales from the Pizzaplex Book 6, Nexi. But that's everything I wanted to talk about for this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and stay tuned for part 3 of my Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, going over everything from the Pizzaplex era. Also, let me know in the comments who you think Glamrock Freddy is. But that's all for now, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys!